Yo, what's up guys, welcome back to another video. This is my first video in about 8 days, 9 days. I got home about 12 hours ago, 2 or 3 in the morning yesterday. And yeah, this is my first reaction back. I still have 3 strikes. For those of you who have seen my community post on YouTube or my Patreon posts, I've been having issues and it all happened as soon as I got away. And then as soon as I was going to leave, I've had more issues. So it's just been very frustrating, to say the least. But I think we've got somewhat of a positive outcome to come. Like, no, not yet, but it's to come in about a week's time. I counter-claimed or whatever, not counter-claimed. I basically just responded in a way to say, how am I getting strikes? And I spoke to the Beasleys because they've had exactly the same issues with the same channel. And I don't really know what it means, but it's being reviewed. And I think the most likely outcome is the claims will be released based off what I've been told. So now it's just a waiting game because I've still got the 3 strikes and I think it's a 10-day period. And because I done it like 3 days ago, I've got like 7 days now to wait until hopefully the claims are released. And then from there, I can do the YouTube reactions or post these videos that I'm doing now onto YouTube. But for the next week, I'm just going to be posting onto the Patreon. If you're watching this on YouTube, this is just basically is a week old video, or video that was done a week ago. So yeah, the Patreon will be where I'm posting all these reactions and just basically just continuing. But on the off chance maybe it doesn't go through and doesn't go well and my channel's gone at this point, then I don't even want to think about it. But I'm going to do a full video actually explaining what the situation is. So I'm just sort of briefly talking about it now, but I do really appreciate the support, the comments, the messages from all of you. It means a lot. You know, I was stressed out, to say the least, and I still am a bit stressed out, but it's just, you know, I'm sort of somewhere now where I assume and I'm hoping that it's all going to end up okay. But yeah, I do really appreciate the support. And on the Patreon, we are going to post the reactions just as normal, pretty much. And this one is 7 questions Americans always ask me about Britain, and it's people from Lost in the Pond. I do find this stuff interesting. This one here as well, the 7 questions Brits always ask me about America. It's just interesting to see because this is obviously stuff that you probably hear. Assumptions, more or less. It's basically just assumptions. Like, questions are people assuming certain things, and it's probably going to be like stereotypical things, all that sort of stuff. But we're going to check this out and see some of these questions. I mean, Americans ask me about Britain. So will it be British people or Britain as a whole? Like the weather. Is it as bad as it seems? Yes. I've just been in Greece and coming back to Britain. I know I complain in videos that it's hot, and it's hot in this room right now, like I'm sweating. But it's not generally hot in like when you're going out, and it's not a nice heat. It's just cloudy humidity, you know. In Greece it was nice blue skies. We were just going to the beach and stuff, you know. It doesn't feel the same. But we're going to check this out and see. Hopefully going to enjoy. And hopefully you're doing well. Let's jump into this.
Hello, I'm Lawrence and I'm on a quest to uncover all of the memos that Britain and America lost in the pond, and one of those memos pertains to questions. And this video is sponsored by Mondly, who are offering 96% off lifetime access at
96% lifetime access. They are blessing the people.
Mondly.
Well, I don't actually know what Mondly is, so
app/lost in
get
the
that money
pond.
though.
Specifically, questions that I've received over the years from my American subscribers about the United Britain. As somebody who has resided in the United States for 16 years, and as somebody who talks about that fact at great length on this very channel, I in fact receive several such questions every single day. I am happy about that. This is just my general disposition. And so today I wanted to do something that the last 9 years of running this channel has led up to. Revealing the 7, that's 5, most common questions that I get from American subscribers about Britain. And if you yourself haven't become a subscriber of what the Quincy Gazette refers to as a content creation phenomenon, do that now.
Go on. Go on.
In the meantime, here are the most common questions that I receive from Americans about Britain.
Why do British people say
Question I get all.
Why do we say maths? Oh, because in the US it's math. I don't really know why this is. I don't understand why there's a difference in how we just say. I don't know. What is the correct way to say it, honestly? I assume it's maths, but I am British. I'm going to say it's maths because I assume when like maths was first found out, actually probably something like ancient Rome or something, to be honest, or maybe even further back than that. So it's not British. It's probably just a Latin word that's been translated in different ways, if I'm honest. But we're gonna see.
All the time is, why do British people say maths instead of math? And this is one of those questions that often gets asked in reverse as well. In other words, why do Americans say math instead of maths? And if you go on any kind of internet forum, as we used to say back in the past, you'll generally speaking have Americans defend their position and Brits defend their position, and nobody see the other side's argument. But the common reason that we give as to why we pluralize it is that it is short for mathematics, which itself describes various disciplines of math.
So I guess math is just math for mathematics, and then maths is just mathematics, but then taking the S from the mathematics at the end, which is a weird thing to do. I'm just guessing, but I assume that's how it is.
Now, in America, mathematics is obviously seen as a singular entity, just like English and science, even though all three of those subjects contain multiple disciplines. In science, you have chemistry, physics, biology. In English, you have English language and English literature and many other facets in between, which then makes me realize that neither country is consistent. After all, nobody in Britain would say I have a degree in Englishes. On the other side of the coin, Americans might refer to sporting activities as sports, to denote the fact that there is in fact more than one sport. In Britain, we don't usually have that final S, even though the argument for it being a countable noun is pretty strong. So I suppose in that regard, it's just like the rest of the English language. Then. No one can really make up their mind what the rules are.
Makes sense.
Speaking of language barriers, wouldn't it be nice if we had an app that helped you overcome them?
Oh!
We do. It's called Mondly. With over 125 million users, Mondly...
I mean, this is going on my Patreon now, so I'm going to skip this, but he's getting his money. He is absolutely smashing it with these ads, man. You know what? He's raking it in and he fully deserves it. Especially with these language apps, I swear these are money. And it's useful as well. If you want to learn languages, you know what to do. I mean, I'm going to let him say his discount code.
Mondly's quizzes.
I say going to let him say it. I'm going to just let it run. That's what I mean.
Jump on the sale. Go to mondly.app/lostinthepond. The link is in my description below. At least once a month, I get this question. Why do Brits put an R in words that don't have one?
Okay, we got to hear. So we got to see some. Examples.
And at first I was really confused by this question because I couldn't think of an example of what they meant until somebody gave me an example. In the Beatles song, A Day in the Life, John Lennon says, I saw a film today, oh boy. Now, most British people probably wouldn't find anything particularly unusual about the way it's pronounced. We don't even notice when he's singing it that he's pronouncing an R after the word saw.
Saw. I guess that is like, yeah, it is. In the US, you say, I saw. No, it's the same. I saw. It's pretty much the same, it's just the W's a bit stronger.
Americans, it's apparently very noticeable when British people do this. And that is, of course, because the United States is a largely...
A cat has a claw. I'm trying to think of other words that end in W. I can't really think.
The rhotic-speaking country. That is, most Americans will pronounce the R in words like door. So in American English, it's very important to differentiate between those words that do have R's in them and those that don't. If it were the Beach Boys singing A Day in the Life, it would most likely go like this. I saw a film today, oh boy. They would probably sound less like Kermit the Frog. Notice when I do that, there's no R sound. So why do we do it in Britain? Well, this is known as an intrusive R, and there's an intrusive cat. That is, when you have a word that ends in a vowel sound, like saw, that's followed by a word that begins with a vowel sound, like A. And so our brains feel compelled to stick an R in between the two words, so that the transition from one to the other feels a bit more fluid. And the best part is we don't even realise we're doing it.
What the hell?
Now, of course, I get questions.
British people drink warm... What? Do they?
Fluid. And the best part is we don't even realise we're doing it.
What do British people drink? I'm not really a beer drinker, but even then, with beers, it's typically cold. Like, Brits love like a cold beer on a summer's day. So
now, of course, I get questions on a range of topics, and it's not just limited to words. One question that I get asked all the time is, do British people like warm beer? And the first time I was asked this question actually predates my YouTube channel because it was asked to me by a family member of my wife's. And I was quite puzzled by this because I've never really thought of British beer as warm. I've also never thought of it as British. Now, there will be instances, of course, when we buy, say, a 6-pack and there's no room in our fridges because they're tiny, so we leave them on a counter or a cupboard. And of course, famously, we don't have air conditioning in Britain, so beer can, in those circumstances, get as warm as the rest of the house. But when you're talking about visiting British pubs, some of which also don't have air conditioning, to my memory, the beer was often cold and refreshing and usually mediocre. When it comes to temperature, I wouldn't say that I've noticed a discernible difference between beer that's served in America and beer that's served in Britain. So I'm not really sure where it comes from, but it is a stereotype that's labelled at the British. I'm also not a beer connoisseur, so I could just be talking out of my arse.
Respect. That's same with me as well.
As somebody who has in the past been accused of using the terms England, Britain and the UK interchangeably, I should probably point out that I do know the difference between the three, while conceding that it probably is quite confusing for people not from there. Basically, Britain is one island with multiple mini-islands all around it. And this consists of three countries that all get along in perfect harmony. Scotland, Wales and England. But the three of them, known collectively as Great Britain, also formed a unity with Northern Ireland. And so that became the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. So you might be asking, well, what about the rest of Ireland? We don't own them, so they're not part of this. Though technically...
So the term United Kingdom is quite a recent term. Like, in terms of history, it's a very recent term. Can't be more than, what, like 60 years old? Not even that?
The island that makes up Britain and the island that makes up Ireland is all part of the British Isles. It's so confusing. So I hope that that abbreviated answer answers the question that you needed answers to.
What actually is pudding to British people? Pudding is like, so you have your dinner, and then pudding, it's just an interchangeable word for dessert, but pudding I would just say is like a cake with ice cream, like a scoop of ice cream and like chocolate cake together or something like that. Custard and apple pie together.
Inevitably, when you have two countries that are in fact separated by a large ocean, a lot of the memos that get lost in the pond pertain to food. And a question that comes up all the time is, how exactly do Brits define the word pudding? I had to think about this question when I was first asked it, because I'd never really imagined that we have different definitions for this word. And then I thought about it for a few seconds and realised, well, of course we do. In America, it turns out that a pudding is a very specific type of dessert that has sort of the consistency of custard, but isn't necessarily custard.
Like
this
mousse?
is weird to the British, although perhaps not as weird as our own definitions, because in England and or Britain and or the United Kingdom, pudding is a synonym for dessert, so that custardy thing would also be referred to as a pudding in Britain, but then so would chocolate cake and apple pie and...
He's read my mind.
And ice cream. And you might think, well, what's weird about...
I said ice cream and chocolate cake together. I said apple pie. He's literally just... What can I say?
Oh, that seems pretty straightforward to me. Yeah, well, we also use pudding to describe specific savoury dishes. In fact, it turns out that it was in such a vein that the word pudding originated from the 13th...
Oh, we've got like... I'm trying to think of one savoury pudding. And I can't think. Oh, black pudding. There you go.
Century, it originally meant a kind of sausage, the stomach or one of the entrails of a pig, sheep, etc., stuffed with mincemeat, blood and seasoning, boiled and kept till needed. This is why to this very day Brits and people from that other country, Ireland, refer to a type of blood sausage as black pudding. And in the UK, this savoury definition extends beyond the context of blood sausage, because you also have Yorkshire pudding, which is similar to what Americans know as popovers.
Does the king actually
Of course, I couldn't really make this video.
I don't really know how the stuff works either. I think how it is, I mean, he's going to say actually. I just think it's just to sort of show, like, you've got like someone who's there really. Like the king's just sort of, like the royal family's so associated with Britain. It's just there as like a figurehead. I don't really know if they do anything now. I mean, I don't really care about the royal family. But I think it's just there to sort of represent the UK. But I could be wrong.
Without addressing a British institution in which some Americans have a surprisingly large interest, the royal family. And perhaps the biggest question that I get around the royals is, does the king actually have any real power over his subjects? Subjects is their word, not mine. Because in Britain, I don't think we'd ever refer to ourselves as subjects, and certainly wouldn't view ourselves in that way. And that's largely because the king doesn't really have any power over us. He just tours the country in a robe.
Well,
they no longer have much say over the affairs of Britain. That's usually done at the political level, over which King Charles has to give his nod and approval. Yes, you can call an election right now, Rishi. Not that I was ever going to say no. Basically, a word that gets used commonly about the monarch is that they are just ceremonial in nature. At this point, I think they're just there because nobody can imagine them not being there. So you've got all of those British people that do love and adore the British royal family and turn out for the parades and things like that. And then you've got people who can't stand them. And neither party wins, because this group, the group that really likes the royal family, inevitably ends up with way too many royal plate sets. And this group hasn't been able to affect the change they'd like to see, which is the complete removal of the royal family. And so in that respect, I suppose we are subjects. Not to be confused with maths.
Why do Brits like to hate on Americans? Okay, was this the thumbnail? I think this was the thumbnail. Juicy. Let's see what he's got to say here, because I don't think Brits hate Americans. It's so weird, right? I feel like Americans also hate Brits. Maybe it's a bit stronger for Brit as some. Like, again, when I say Americans, it's a generalization. Like, you'll see just like memes of it. Like, I'm saying hate in a sort of a way of like just taking the piss out of one another. Actually, I feel like maybe certain Brits definitely do have a more snidey look at America in general. But I wouldn't say it's a big amount of people. But it's a weird one. I feel like it's quite a mutual feeling. And a fun, friendly, in some cases, just a bit of banter, you know. But maybe I'm wrong.
Finally, this sentiment seems to be everywhere that I look online, including my DMs and comment sections, and that is, why do British people dislike Americans? And I'll tell you something, the answer to that is really complicated. Firstly, for the large part, I don't think it's even true. You have to consider that us Brits love to moan. And I mean about anything. It could be the weather. It could be our local MP, Member of Parliament. It could be that the bus timetable has changed for the 4th time this month. Now, when this happens on
which is a fair reason to complain, that last one.
Social media, where the mood and the motivation of the person speaking is not entirely clear, I could see how a sentence like, oh, bloody Americans calling it soccer again, might seem like it's an attack. But something else that you should keep in mind in Britain is we attack our best friends. Chainsaw Jim is not just my mate, he's an arsehole. He really is an arsehole. And he's not my friend. Don't take these things personally. And Brits, do some fact-checking first. There's often a historic explanation that says the thing for which you are attacking them was in fact the original work of the British. Anyone who's been following my channel for a long time will know multiple examples, whether that is the British origination of soccer itself, or the word fall to mean autumn. If I've learned anything from this video, it's that I get a lot of questions, so thanks for those. And I couldn't possibly have made this video without thinking ahead to part 2, in which I will look at 7 questions that British people ask me about America. And
well, I'm going to check that one out next, because it's just fascinating to see. It's weird, right? Because the last question, I always feel like everyone hates Britain. And I feel like maybe there's reasons that are very fair. Like the history, you know, of us, I guess, enslaving multiple countries, forcing them to do all this stuff to get us rich, you know. But that's history. Come on, let's move forward together. No, but seriously, I just feel like, more so England. I feel like England is hated by the world. Like, the Euros is on right now. Everyone in Europe hates England. Like, there's rivalries between like countries like Germany and the Netherlands. There's like a rivalry there. I'm trying to think of other ones, to be honest. I can't really think. But just rivalries. Serbia and Albania, there you go. That's actually a lot of hatred. But then all the countries will come together and just happily hate on England. Again, valid reasons. British people, when like travelling abroad and I guess to these tournaments, probably don't give themselves the best representation for their country. But I keep saying British, English people. Because I don't think Scottish people are hated by the world, or Welsh. But English people, man, we're just hated. But maybe I'm just playing victim, you know. Maybe it's not even true. And maybe you just feel like that when it comes to you and your own country. You just feel that sort of hatred. Like French people must feel hated because everyone says their hospitality is terrible and they're grumpy and all that, you know. So maybe it's just how everyone feels about their own countries. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this reaction and let me know your thoughts. Until next time, peace.